Welcome everyone. My name is John Verhaeven and I'm the director of the power plant. So really, a really warm welcome to this 2015 Art Toronto, which I will never be tired to say how fabulous it looks, and congratulate the entire team on such a really great rebrand and great installation. The whole thing is amazing, and I really think this dome is also such an interesting addition. So I welcome you this afternoon to our second Power Talk for this series with Mexican artist Carlos Amorales, whose installation Black Cloud is currently on view at the power plant. And for those of you who haven't been to the power plant, it's really, really easy to find. You just, you turn right and you see Simcoe, and you keep going all the way to the end, and you can't go any further. Before you hit the water, you'll see the power plant, and our amazing gallery attendant and staff will be more than happy to welcome you. So I trust that after hearing Carlos talk about his work, you will want to run to the power plant and see the piece that he has on right now. So for 10 years running, Art Toronto has commissioned the power plant to co-present a series of lectures in the context of the art fair. For this edition of Power Talks, we're very pleased to present a fantastic lineup of speakers with a focus on art in Latin America. Yesterday, we heard from Sofia Hernandez Chanque, a curator of the contemporary art at the Patricia Phelps de Cisneros collection, and tomorrow we'll feature Elizabeth Vollert, founder and artistic director of La Otra Biennale in Bogota. Many people have helped to make Power Talks a successful ongoing program. First, the Power Plant would like to thank our partners for the last 10 years at Art Toronto, and particularly Director Susanna Rosenstock, and also our partners at Harbourfront Centre. We're also never tired of thanking our government funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council. All public programs at the power plant are generously supported by our primary educational sponsor, CIBC, and again, never tired of saying thank you to them. And as I mentioned, the power plant is 5 minutes away, so we invite you to come and visit our current exhibitions: Carlos Amorales' Black Cloud, Dora Garcia, I See Word, I Hear Voices, and Mark Lewis's Invention. Admission is always free thanks to our all-year, all-free sponsor, BMO Financial Group. Now I will gladly hand things over to my colleague, Adrian Constantino, who's our TD Curator of Education and Outreach, who will introduce this afternoon's speakers, Carlos Amorales. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Carlos Amorales. Mexican artist Carlos Amorales was born in Mexico City in 1970, where he lives and works today. His recent work combines sound, sculpture, and live performance, encouraging interactions between object and the individual. He has exhibited at the Tate Modern London, the Philadelphia Art Museum, the Museum of Latin American Art of Buenos Aires, and San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. He has taken part in the Havana Biennale in 2009, New York Performa in 2007, and the Venice Biennale in 2003. His performances have been presented at the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago and the Centre Georges Pompidou at Paris, among other venues. Please join me in welcoming Carlos Amorales.
Hello. Well, good evening. Thank you for being here. So I will start. I will do this lecture about the piece that we are showing in Power Plant. So I will not speak about my work in general, but just concentrate more in this lecture. For this occasion, I decided to write it down. And I just had it translated by Richard Mosca, who's here. But by reading it, I realized that my pronunciation sometimes is not the best. Do you hear me well? Because I don't hear myself. Okay. So I will try to do, but sometimes some words will come a bit funny from my behalf. So Although I did not study natural history later, said Austerlitz, many of great-uncle Alfonso's botanical and zoological disquisitions have remained in my mind. Only a few days ago, I was rereading that passage in Darwin he once showed me, describing a swarm of butterflies flying uninterruptedly for several hours 10 miles out from the South American coast, when even with a telescope it was impossible to find a patch of empty sky visible between their whirling wings. But I always found what Alfonso told us at that time about the life and death of moths especially memorable, and of all creatures, I still feel the greatest awe for them. In the warmer months of the year, one or another of those nocturnal insects quite often strays indoors from the small garden behind my house. When I get up early in the morning, I find them clinging to the wall, motionless. I believe, said Austerlitz, they know they have lost their way, since if you do not put them out against carefully, they will stay where they are, never moving, until the last breath is out of their bodies, and indeed they will remain in the place where they came to grief even after death, held fast by their tiny claws that stiffened in their last agony, until a draught of air detaches them and blows them into a dusty corner. Sometimes, seeing one of these moths that have met their end in my house, I wonder what kind of fear and pain they will feel while they are lost. As Alfonso had told him, said Austerlitz, there is really no reason to suppose that lesser beings are devoid of sentient life. I just read you an excerpt from Austerlitz, the last novel that the German author W.G. Sebald wrote before he died in a car accident. The book describes the life of a child during World War II who is separated from his parents and gets to Wales as a refugee, to live at the home of a preacher and his wife. The main character's problem has to do with memory. The first memory he has is his arrival at the train station. He's forgotten the rest of his childhood. The writing is dense and obscure, a detailed description of various subjects and settings, along with other, apparently unconnected references, like a series of photographs inserted between the pages. It's only by the second half of the book that the reader can infer that these visual references represent a search for lost memory, or reconstruct the absence of memories for the character. I read the book months before traveling to northern Mexico to visit my grandmother. She had a heart attack the year before. After that, she never fully recovered, and in the days before my visit, she fell sick again. I traveled there with my sons, who were 2 and 4 years old. I want them to meet her and remember her through their own experience. I also traveled there to say goodbye. It might be the last chance I had to see her. While we were there, one night that I couldn't sleep, an image came to me, a vaulted ceiling infested with black moths or butterflies, completely carpeted with them. It's unusual for me to work with the mental images like this that come to me and that I try to materialize. But this image was different. There was something very scary about it. Something very clear about it. It became scary. You see, sometimes I can't sleep. When I went back to my studio in Mexico City, I described the image to the team that works in my studio, and we started thinking how to make it. The first thing we did was to compile a photographic archive of a variety of species of nocturnal moths. I normally base my digital drawings on photographs that I accumulate for intuitive or personal reasons, tracing their contours on top of them, so like making silhouettes. These post-photographic images are a kind of interface. They exist somewhere in between the public and the private, between a personal image and the picture that once transformed is seen by other people. In this sense, what I've been doing is experimenting with ways of infiltrating public space with them while holding on to their personal essence, which remains masked but exists as a latent presence. Following this process, we did tests with black pepper moths until we came up with a solution to reproduce the image. Each moth or butterfly is a type of origami cutout that only requires a few folds and some adhesive so it will stick to the wall. We made 30 different designs with 3 kinds of texture in 5 different sizes. In total, we made 400 varieties of black moths. We created a chaotic effect, a swarm that isn't perceived as a design pattern, but rather as a natural phenomenon. Over the following months, we made close to 8,000 butterflies that we installed in the studio in order to understand the relationship with the architecture, wrapped around the column, stuck to the ceiling, in the corners of walls, or covering the windows. We start by putting them up in the kitchen, and as we kept on making more, we clear out the studio workrooms one by one. Ultimately, the space filled with black moths as it was emptied of tools. We evacuated the place as it was invaded by the image. When we finished the installation, we dismount all of the moths, and like Dracula moving to London, we put everything in boxes and sent them to New York to install in a gallery where I'd been invited to show. To fill the gallery, we had to make about 30,000 black moths. The effect of feeling overwhelmed The effect of feeling overwhelmed happened again in this second space, which was for the first time in public. I remember that the galleries and I panicked. We were scared of presenting an infested space that also seemed not to be showing any art objects that you expect to find in a gallery. We also wondered about the appropriate limits of this for an installation of this kind. And I decided it should not just occupy the exhibition space. The piece then spread to the workplaces in the rest of the building, breaking that boundary was fitting, because had it been a live swarm, I would not have remained contained in a single space. After that first show, black clouds started traveling to other venues. I was asked to show it at a gallery in Miami in the context of an art fair. That caught the eye of our curator, who asked me to install it in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is an encyclopedic institution whose vaulted ceilings were like those in the image that have come to my mind, which is recognized for its vast collection of modern art, included works by Brancusi, by Dalí, Picasso, and especially by Duchamp. The curator suggested I also establish a dialogue with one of the works in the collection. That was a difficult decision to take. What historical artist did I want to relate to? As on previous occasions, the plague was not quarantined to one gallery of the museum and hovered around some works by Mondrian. So that's what I decided at the end, which faced the back door, as you can see here, of a Tandonnet by Duchamp. I thought of this and an indirect association with Duchamp, which became obvious several years later. A few months after that, the piece was brought by collectors in Phoenix, so I installed it in their house. So it's in a staircase, so you can go down. That's how it goes through the house. Later still, I installed it at the Sala Verónica in Murcia, Spain, a deconsecrated 18th century church that now functions as an art space. Up to that point, black cloud had followed the ideal journey of a piece of contemporary art. An idea is executed in the studio and sent to the gallery, which in turn shows it at an art fair, from where it travels to the museum to meet a collector. Finally, as it used to happen with the artworks in the distant past, the journey reached its conclusion in church. Then a curator sent me a black and white picture showing an infestation of moths over a rack of jackets in a store. I recognized the shapes and the way it was installed, but I was sure I hadn't done anything related to clothes. Flustered, I researched the photograph and found out that it was at the Dior store in Paris, from what I could read in an article in the French newspaper Libération. This is the article. The brand had just appropriated the image. The campaign advertised a collection that had been pressed on the runway a few months earlier, in which black butterflies were perched on clothes, replacing a bow tie with a pair of wings or decorating jacket sleeves. I found out that the piece had been commissioned to an Italian artist, Andrea Mastrovito, to decorate the Dior boutique in Paris. Among the pictures of the opening party, I found this one, showing the clothing brand, artistic director, and the CEO flanking the artist. Reading the way that these three men are pictured together, I hypothesized about how the appropriation had taken place, and I realized that if I took legal action against them, the brand would already have a defensive ploy prepared, assigning the blame to the artist for copying the piece, freeing the corporation of any responsibility. The issue couldn't be resolved by legal means, as it would turn out into a moral debate between two otherwise unrelated artists. Ironically, in the picture, the clothing brand's creative director is wearing a sweater with the word innocent stenciled across in caps. Through my research, I found more echoes of the piece, like a line of dresses by designer Diane von Furstenberg, one of which she modeled herself when it was first presented on the runway. Then I found a picture of a Los Angeles art dealer wearing a dress from this collection, and that made me think of the ironic journey that an image from the world of art can make in order to cross from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States. Shortly afterwards, a collection appeared by Dolce & Gabbana, in which the motif was reused as a textile and wallpaper pattern. Their dresses were modeled by celebrities like Miley Cyrus on the red carpet, and by Asian celebrities whose name I'm not familiar with. Dior, Furstenberg, and Dolce & Gabbana, black butterflies, were in turn imitated by other, more or less prestigious clothing brands, like the historic French firm Lanvin, which showed the butterfly suspended, simulating a flight. Its gowns were modeled on the red carpet by celebrities like Kirsten Scott Thomas. Oh, sorry. Wow, I'm going back. Oh, here. And by models suggesting a fashionista suicide or a progressive loss of glamour in the image, as the motif subsequently appeared on the clothing of less and less significant brands that reappropriated in every imaginable style. The moths eventually spread to online stores, where the price of the garments dropped precipitously from a high of more than $500 to a very affordable $16. The popularity of the clothes with black butterfly patterns continued to grow along with selfies of women in dressing rooms, or posing as pin-ups for more private situations, one would like to think. This was when the black moths discreetly made their way from everyday clothes to undergarments, first launched by Dolce & Gabbana, bras, thongs, and sets, which were then picked up by Victoria's Secret. Along with the lingerie, stockings were being sold that mimicked black butterfly tattoos. Then the moths kept getting closer to human skin. Then I received a picture of someone who had seen my piece at the Philadelphia Museum, asking me whether I mind that she tattooed the moths on her arm. She sent me these shots. I have to confess that I find it a bit disturbing. When I got over it, it seemed like a very relevant image. Sorry. This is not only the English, but since it involved the return from a journey that began with the intimacy of a mental image that then rejoined the body. An image that would find a place for itself through the art industry, that was then transported to another industry, fashion, and finally settled on skin. I am fascinated by this long voyage from inside the body to outside of it, from fantasy to reality, from the nebulous to the concrete. One day, I decided to Google the words black butterflies in Chinese. As a result, I found photos of the work of an Australian artist called Jane Dyer, who had made a piece very similar to mine, also in 2007. The difference being that her butterflies came out of books strewn on the floor, like you can see them here. Dyer also installed her piece in different places, as in a gallery, or in a library here, in the lobby of a building, and even in an art fair in Hong Kong. Several people from the art world told me that they had seen this other version of the piece. Since both installations were from 2007, I assumed that it was synchronicity, and I tried to contact Dyer through an Australian collector that I know, but I didn't get a response. Later, in 2010, Kirill Cholakov, a Bulgarian artist, presented the installation Piccolo Popolo, Little Folk. His piece consisted of 4,000 black butterflies cut out by hand, which is a lot of work, placed on the gallery walls. Here we see him installing the piece. Also, British artist Rebecca G. Coles, using scissors, paper and pins, creates dense swarms of butterflies that come together in a band of organized chaos. With much greater visibility, the American Paul Wilinski used black butterflies as the main motif for his decorative work and gained notoriety through the viewers of the TV series Gossip Girl, where an arrangement of black butterflies appears over the bed of one of the main characters. Work that other decorators have watered down or made lesser versions of in various conventional places, in living rooms with pink couch, or in fancy restaurants, or at hair salons. Now, there is even a black butterflies as a do-it-yourself home decoration item. Or tutorials that thoughtfully explain simple ways of making and installing butterflies on your wall. Wondering how an image had become so popular, out of my control, and had gone viral like a huge advertisement campaign, I hypothesized about the consumerist mindset of some contemporary art collectors, and I decided I want to test the commercial idiosyncrasy of an image that had already been mass distributed. I made a series of 7 paintings that I sent to the Basel Art Fair, figuring that they will sell quickly. And indeed, for the first time ever, my dealer called me on the opening day asking me for more paintings. He had sold everything in a couple of hours. It was around then that a friend of mine who was reading Austerlitz showed me in the book the photograph of a black moth that accompanied the description with which I started this talk. The black moths show up in the speculations of Sebald's character, Austerlitz, and I had latched onto that image. Without realizing it, during that night I had of insomnia. So I decided to write this story and insert it in Sebald's text, photocopying his book at a stationery store like a university student would. Ultimately, the image of the black moth isn't an original literary idea either. Sebald himself mentions his source, a passage of Darwin's, and if it doesn't obviously reference the evolution of species, then it at least suggests the evolution of images. I would like to think that the authorship of an image, initially of this kind, a cloud of black butterflies, after it had been stolen by so many people, becomes part of the public domain. Now, it belongs to all of us. If this is true, then do natural images fundamentally belong to everyone? Or is it the other way around? Do images that become part of the public domain return to nature? Recently, a series of products have appeared that are as far removed from the art world as they are from the fashion world. They form part of that everyday banality that contain all of us, in which celebrities or characters from Sebald novels do not live. It's a world of empty bookcases with simple ideals, a world of blank diaries, of lives barely beginning, ideals that year after year drive us to achieve the typical goals of life, like to marry someone attractive, to own a car, to make babies. Ideals that you achieve so that you can sleep in an empty bed and wait for marvelous nocturnal images to swarm over you like black butterflies. Thank you. Thank you. Gracias. Thank you. If there are some questions, I would love to speak. And now I don't read, so now. Yes. Okay.
I thought this is very interesting because it's too familiar to me. Because the palomillas, we call it the palomillas, right? It's very common in Mexico to have this. I think maybe you have the same memories when you were a child. We saw a lot of these, what do you name in English? Moth?
Moth. Yeah.
We call it palomillas, right? And then they were transformed in black butterflies. And
yes, sometimes they appear.
Yes, they appear. It's
they have this very
strange,
scary meaning, like people think they relate to death.
Exactly. Yes.
And if you're a bit, ¿cómo se dice? Superstitious.
Exactly. And it's like you bring like a memories from my childhood with all this exhibit, because I remember my mother, she was really scared of the black butterflies, and then each time we saw more in my bedroom or whatever, kill it because it's going to be transformed in a black butterfly. As you said, black butterflies, I don't know, in Mexico during summer, because it is raining, you find a lot of those in the houses on the garage, and this is very scary, and it is like a dream that maybe your house will look like that if you don't kill the before they grow.
Well, my studio looked like that.
Well, that's my comment.
Yeah, my studio looked for 8 months like that, and the neighbors were very suspicious. It was only when we opened the door and let everybody in that they suddenly calmed down and were like, "Oh, it's beautiful." But for 8 months, they were really looking at us very badly. Another question, somebody?
I have one. It's quite simple. Regarding the story and behind this work is wonderful, the journey itself. I have the question regarding the usage of an image from a legal point of view. We live in a time that there are so many art fairs and you just go from a corner to the other and you see more or less the same image, and in this case, you had an installation before and went to such a big event like the Dior opening boutique or whatever. And I know Mastro Vito myself, so thank you for letting me know. I didn't know about it. But what should an artist do today when the proper image is used? You said it nicely, but I'm talking from a legal point of view, as an artist to an artist.
Yeah.
How shall an artist behave at the beginning? Because I think there is a lot of emotion as well, that is a lot of fatigue behind an artwork, and after it's reproduced from somebody else, not recognizing what you do. As well, the last, it was a legal battle lately from the Hauser With in London and in New York about an image used by Mormon for a painting, that he took an image from an artist, from a journalist and photographer used at the Belgium press. He painted that image. So they agreed outside court for that image that was used. So not the gallery, but the artist itself paid the photographer all the rights for that image that was painted by him. But he used, because that was published on the press. So no, I don't know if I made myself clear.
I think it has a lot to do with the kind of work you do. So if, for instance, you consider your work something very unique that has to remain unique, I guess that's really like perhaps an insult or unfair. Or what I had to think for myself, or that's what I think, is that I work very graphically. I work with graphical means, and I also work a lot in the pop space, in the pop realm. Like I work, for instance, in a record label. I did a record label. So in my case, I had to think that my work had this. It works in a much more open field. So I had to kind of get in terms to that happening. I mean, I don't know what is the best for everybody. I think most people just sue, and that's a common thing to do. For me, it's more interesting the story that it developed. So in that sense, maybe that's what I got back from it. Yeah, I don't know. Also, I mean, morally, I thought it was difficult to fight with another artist. I thought it would become something really. I'm like 10 years older than him, so I thought, well, it will become really a stupid, nasty battle. So do I want that, no? I also thought, do I want to fight a big corporation? Like, is this what I want to spend my months, or I want to create something? For me, I mean, it's stupid because it's still my work, but in the moment I thought this could be like a big advertisement that I could use to sell my work. Then I thought, I can turn it, and then I can profit from that. Of course, you can also ruin your career if you only make black butterflies forever just because you can make money. No? But, you know, as test and trying to understand how things work, I feel, in a way, we have different options we have to invent. We can think about things differently. I think in the moment all becomes really standardized and clear. It just kills many possibilities. I think it's nicer if I did not understood, but like if a Mormon steals the work from Hauser and Wirth, I think it just creates a bigger culture in a way. If you are starting to define it, basically you create more a legal culture, but not a creative culture. On the other hand, like a swarm of black moths is so open. It's like if I claim the skeleton, you know, it doesn't. I mean, perhaps it's more small. But after all, it's a natural image. So after all, I think, and something else that I recognize is that the more we minimalize, the more we simplify our language, or visual language, the more possibilities there are that other people can come to the same conclusions. So, like, is that a response? Somebody else is.
Well, thank you for that great elaboration on influence and dissemination. I'd love to see you produce an artist book or maybe a video relating this story, but there's a certain irony in there, isn't there? In order to use those images, you'd have to get permission from those all those other sources and pay them a fee.
Well, in Spanish we
but
have
that could be part of the work.
In Spanish we have a saying, es ladrón que roba ladrón tiene 100 años de perdón. Like a thief who steals from a thief has 100 years of pardon, forgiveness. But I wonder if that can work.
Yeah. But you could maybe make a case on moral grounds, that you would have, like a moral authority to steal from these other thieves, and
a what? Sorry?
Oh, that you might have moral
authority.
Yeah, moral authority.
A moral authority.
Yeah. Or immoral. Yeah.
I try. I know, but that's a question.
Actually, Richard Gere also used the subject in a movie called The Mothman Diaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite interesting if you want to see it.
Okay, I will check.
I have a simple question from the beginning before your story of how it was copied. As a Latina, I associate the dark insects with bad spirits. Was that part of your original concept? And you are infesting rather than cleaning.
No, as I say, when it came as an idea, just like it really sounds terrible, but it was like a vision, like it just appeared. And I was like, saying goodbye to my grandmother. So I think it's kind of a vanitas in a way, or like a memento, not like a way to say goodbye. I think it happened unconsciously. I don't think I didn't really conceptualize it. I wish I could conceptualize such a thing. I said like, okay, this little thing would end up in, but it was not conceptualized. But I really feel it has a lot to do with death, in a sense, not in a nasty, killing, ugly way, but more as an image of death, I think.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. What's it?
Hi, I have a question. When I look at the first group that you're showing here, which could have been the ones that you did in the first iteration, between that iteration and the ones that you sold to the collector, first question is like, how many? Is there just one collector who owns the piece?
I have two versions. One is like the one that is the one that flies, and also takes each space, or it always changes in the space where it's shown. Mm-hmm. And the second is part of a replica of my studio. So I kind of replicated this space 1-to-1, and then so you have to build it, and then and that's more like the original image, like let's say the personal image.
And so in terms of in the private, there's only one collector who owns it, or do you have many collectors?
Yeah, the one in Power Plant is from this private collection.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yes.
My question is, you started off with moths as images, but in your talk you kind of go back and forth between butterfly and moths.
Yeah, it's very
Is there
confusing.
a difference between the two for you, or you see them as simultaneously
We were discussing this.
a representation of similar kind of ideas?
Well, we were discussing because moths are like the ones that eat your clothes.
Some, yeah.
But then you have the ones that sometimes you see there, are more like butterflies, like this black kind of colorful. I mean, like if you really look, they have like blue or green. And I was meaning more those ones. So it's kind of unclear. So it's like nocturnal butterflies could be.
Okay. Well, Tila said that's how the French call them. The
Pavillon de nuit.
Papillon de
Yeah, in Spanish we say mariposa nocturna.
Do you say the same thing?
Yes.
I photograph moths at night, and they show up on my back porch. I live in Nova Scotia overlooking the sea and on the edge of a forest. And they come out of the trees and land on the walls of my house. And it's an astonishing thing to experience it on a humid summer, dark night. There's so many that I have trouble not walking on them. But the amazing thing is when they all first come, they look white. When they come out of the forest, they look white coming to my house. And then when I photograph them, I discovered that there are all these amazing colors and patterns, and that's what keeps me doing it. But yours are black. How did that happen?
Because the image...
It just came, yeah.
Like the image was, very, very clear. But I was far away, so it was an image, really like from a large space.
Yeah,
it's
amazing because it's reverse, you know.
Right.
Thank you.
There's somebody there. Someone else? No? Two?
I can speak to the white and black.
This is just a technical question, Carlos. I'm wondering, how do you cut them all out? Are they die cut? You mentioned you have helpers in your studio. I'm thinking they're not done by hand. If that would be far too much. And
then I will be really suing everybody.
And then I'm wondering how you choreograph them. Do you do that yourself? Do you have helpers who help you install, or do you direct them? Or how do you go about deciding where to place them all?
Yeah, well, they are cut with a laser machine. So that means still it's a lot of work because it takes a long time, and also we have to fold them and glue them and everything. So not because they are made in laser, they come out like automatically. But of course, it's not like cutting them by hand. An important thing is that they were different kinds, like different shapes, let's say, and also different sizes. And we also engraved some kind of like lines onto the paper. So when you see them closely, you also see some differences, that they're not all the same. The idea was that you don't feel it's just like a design, or like man-made, or like pattern, but that gives you more a feeling of chaos, of a real one. Like how to install them became first a question, like do you photograph it and you make a plan and you send it to the art space and they have to replicate, and then you realize it's impossible and that you have to kind of find ways to do it. So basically what we do first is to trace a drawing. So we trace lines. And like first you analyze the space and then you start tracing lines and then you start to expand them. And that's the way you kind of create. And then of course becomes a question of balancing and composition. I have installed this piece like maybe 14 times now, so I know it very well. I have done it myself many times, but lately somebody from my studio knows it, and she knows how to, Janet, she comes and she knows exactly how to perform it. The idea is when I come, I kind of give the okay, but also I try not to change it, so because she knows.
What do you do in the end? Do you throw them out or box them up, or you?
Since they belong to a collection, and since many times they're replicas, so we have to make them again for each time.
Right.
When the pieces turn down, sometimes we have to destroy them, or we have to pack them and send them back to them.
Right.
It's a lot of work to take out each piece of glue. So sometimes it's better to just pile them and throw.
Okay. Sure.
Someone else? Richard here. There is a question.
What exactly did you do with the Sebald book?
You said you
With
photocopied
the
it
book?
and you reinserted the...
I rewrote my story and I kind of inserted into Sebald. And then I made these 10 copies like of a book. These books, they copy in Mexico outside of the university, like for students, so it's kind of not legal. Yeah, it's like a book made of photocopies and then make these fancy covers. So I kind of inserted there and, you know, like a bit thinking or speculating, like later I could even interfere in the Sebald book.
When you went to the different spaces, did you look at the space and visualize and install in different emotional ways because of the space? Because sometimes they look like they're more like it's been sort of a subtle like swarm that's landed, and then there's that slow cluster where insects will go to different spots. And so your different slides, they did look different. Like some of them look more densely clustered, and depending on the architecture of the space.
Yeah, like in power plant, for instance, it was very clear that you have a walkthrough, you know, towards the door of the space, and it was steep. So I really wanted to create like a more density in the back and less dense in the front. So a bit like,
Does that come from the way insects or moths actually?
no, more like the way humans, like the way humans. No, it's more an emotional effect sometimes. Or some, like the church, it was far too big, so like you cannot completely cover it. So you have to kind of really think how to use them. Some places are very small. Like for instance, in Philadelphia, I didn't want to overpower the Mondrians. Like I was very respectful in a way to Mondrian. No, and I also thought like maybe it's nicer just to put a few and a little one next to a Brancusi, and not just go like I'm the new, you know, like. So it depends very much on that. There was one time we because often I don't want them to have a behavior, let's say a human behavior. So when you have like the exit sign or the, how you say, like the contra incendios, ¿cómo se llama? The extinguisher. I put a few there because otherwise looks like art, nothing, art. So I just put a bit. But for instance, in France, we put it in a place where, in an old lyceum, where a group of children was taken by the Nazis in the 40s, and there is a plague. And we put a little few, just not to create that effect, but people got really offended. So some people came in and just took them and really threw them to the floor. And it was very clear. So then it was like, okay. So then I took out a round. So you know, like you always have to react to the place to find ways. But it's like a drawing, in a sense. That's how I see it, yeah.
So this is a question about sort of the origin of ideas and synchronicity. Do you, and the idea that there might be a general idea out there that any number of people are working towards? Because I found it quite interesting that you said that there was another artist in 2007 that also had a very similar thing that you didn't know about, and I assume they didn't know about you. So the question is now, when you have an idea, do you Google it and make sure that no one else is doing it or anything similar? Are you sort of putting the brakes on certain things by saying, oh, if I better check and see if someone else has done it, or someone's got a similar idea?
No, I don't. I mean, I did this piece in 2007, so it's been like, 6-7 years, no? And so I've been finding these people and these artists. Like now I put them all together, like looks very fast, but actually I've been finding them. So for instance, with the Australian artist, I didn't know her at all, and I end up in a Chinese site, and there I saw a picture of something that looked like, and that's how I discovered about her. And then what I realized is that the world is really big, you know, like it's like we think of globalization, and that's actually, you know, like how many art worlds there are at the end. So I think we don't have to be careful to it becomes paranoid. And also I think it's more fascinating to see what can happen with this. There is something ironic because my first works, I did a replica of myself as a wrestler, and this I called Amorales. But there was somebody else who will use my replica. And this person had to be anonym. And what I realized with this work, like in the moment the fashion industry takes it and becomes the work of someone or no one, I had to become anonym myself. And that's something I've been kind of thinking too, why sometimes in order that an image becomes so spread, maybe it becomes needs anonymity, while other images need like your personal signature, let's say, as a... I think at the end, art has to be more personal. You cannot really. It's not. I mean, it's about invention, but it's not about who's the first and who is the only, and it's not about branding. So now imagine, like, if every night I go and have a dream and then jump in Google Maps, I will stop being an artist. Definitely. Different ones? There are like 23 different ones. There are different sizes, and there are different textures. And each time we install it is unique because it depends on the place. It's a temporary installation, so it's there for a few months or sometimes a week or a day. Yeah. And about 30,000. So with that, it's about the biggest we can. Yeah. Any other question or reflection? Thank you.